welcome back for another episode of Dollar Bin Digging. This is the video and article that I do for comicbookinvest.com, where I talk about those cheap books you can still find tucked away in those discount boxes, those discount bins, those dollar bins at your LCS, flea markets, yard sales, half-price books, wherever you're finding your cheap comic books. These are some titles I think you might be able to still scoop out of there based off of some of the recent news, rumors, announcements, things going on in television, the movies, etc. Hopefully you're enjoying this series as well as everything else here on the channel. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure that you like, you subscribe, you hit the alert button so you don't miss anything. Keep telling your friends so we can keep growing the channel. And if you want to see this week's run of books, just hang on for a few seconds after the intro and I will be right back. All right, so let's start it off this week with the actual comics. So we're going to go through this week's new releases and give you some fun books that you can go out there and hunt for the rest of this weekend and next week. You know, just kind of the fun scavenger hunt kind of a challenge for you to find some of these books. So with that said, this week we did get a new issue of Miles Morales Spider-Man, issue 33, the second part of this God War storyline. And inside this book, we've got some characters we can talk about here. But interestingly enough, let's go here to a character that is more referenced in the fact that he's on a hologram phone, I guess, if you want to say that. So he's not really in the book, but he's shown up before. And the character we're talking about here is Doc Sasquatch. I know. I didn't realize he became a Sasquatch either. I don't know. I must have missed it or forgotten about it. It was way back, and I just forgot that he used to be Doc Samson. Now he's a Sasquatch. I just forgot. This happened back in Immortal Hulk, and I do remember the Immortal Hulk run. I like that run. But back in issue 40 of Immortal Hulk, that's when we got Doc Sasquatch here for the first time. So, boom, big green Sasquatch, as opposed to, you know, the other Sasquatch, you know, or Wendigo. This is the big green one because, you know, Doc Samson, gamma radiation, and also he had green hair. I guess that's the rationale. Point being, Doc Sasquatch. This book is not expensive. You can find it out there. Again, $3 to $8, $9 is how it's sold for. Asking prices as cheap as $2.70 at my comic shop. And you got $5 and $10 asks as well. Once again, I'm telling you, you can probably find this for cover or less at a shop near you. So if you're interested in Doc Sasquatch, you can go and pick this up as his first in that form, I guess. Because it's not really first Doc Samson, but it is his first in that form of being Doc Sasquatch, for what that's worth. Now, his protege is actually Miles's therapist, and she is more of a main focus of this book. So let's refocus here on this character that's been around this title for a little bit longer. And this lady's name here is Keisha Kwan. And again, she's Miles's therapist and Doc Sasquatch's protege, if you will. And she first appeared back in this run, but issue 13. So about 20 issues ago was her first appearance in that gang war storyline. Miles Morales Spider-Man is when we were first introduced to Miss Kwan here. So there you go. She's his therapist and helping Miles around, helping Miles along. This book, also, not very expensive. You can find this one out there in a back issue, probably mostly around cover price. You see $4, $4.63, $3.25 for a Peach Momoko different variant cover. And again, that's the thing with a lot of these modern books. You might have variant covers. I'm really going to focus in on the A unless I tell you otherwise. So with that, you can see even copies listed. It's about $4 no matter what cover you're looking for. So basically, they're still looking for cover price. Maybe you could find it cheaper at a shop near you or in a box or discount bin somewhere. So that's what I'm kind of reminding you about. Now, again, the reason why I'm also focusing in on this character and this issue is because at the end of the actual new release issue, just for your information, Miss Kwan actually gets powered up and she becomes this power lift character. So basically, she'd be like a female form of Doc Samson. Now she's got this green hair. She's all hulked out, beefed up. We'll see how this plays out. But now she's going to be going by power lift. So this is what happens at the end of this Miles issue. So just again, something to keep in mind, which is why maybe her first gets more interest if this character sticks around or has a bigger profile going forward. Who knows? Now, sticking with Marvel, let's get on to this week's issue of Wolverine. This is issue 9, and right there on the cover, we see a couple of classic villains that we haven't seen in quite some time. But we're going to go also flip inside the book to show you them both here, because we are talking about Harpoon and Vertigo. We're going to start with Harpoon first, as since he's on the left, it's easier to go that route. So let's go with him first. So Harpoon, mutant, been around for a while. He goes back to the Mutant Massacre back in the 80s. So June 1986, we're talking Uncanny X-Men number 210. That's the first appearance of Harpoon, sort of. I wouldn't even call this a first appearance because I'm not even sure which one he is. But most people are pointing to this because of the shadows. Yes, I think he's probably the little bowl cut down, the shortest one in this group, but they're in shadow. And we can't really confirm that it is him. Best guess is he is one of these. I mean, we know who the one is in front, but in the back there, we don't know for certain. So with that, let's just say this is what it is. It's still a good book, regardless if you want it for first Harpoon or not. We're getting introduced to the Marauders, and they're reintroduced there in shadow, and he is one of the Marauders. And oh, darn it, I didn't get the prices on this. But again, this is a book that you can find for a decent price out there if you go out there digging. It used to be much more expensive back in the day, but these days you can still find your $5 and $10 copies if you go searching, and maybe you can find it for less. Who knows? So let's get into the next issue. Sorry about that. I didn't pull the right snapshots, but the next issue in July of 1986, we are going to get the actual full reveal, no longer in shadow. This is issue 211. You can see it's got the anniversary border. We just did one of those for Cap recently. And right there, see, with that bowl cut, there's Harpoon. And then we also got Vertigo as part of this squad. And then, we got Scalp Hunter, who is a regular in the current Psylocke run, FYI as well. Point being, all the Marauders introduced here right as the issue opens. So this would probably be a more interesting book to grab rather than the shadowy tease at the end of last issue. But this one, again, is not all that expensive. Darn it, I didn't grab the prices on this one either. But it's affordable if you want to go out there and dig for it. We're just going to have to skip it. Sorry, and move on because I didn't grab the right snapshots for this. But you guys get the idea. You get the point. So without having the official numbers, let's keep it going and let's look at Vertigo next. Now, one would think in that reveal that we just showed, that was her first appearance. And you would be wrong if you thought that way, because Vertigo had actually been around for a few years before that issue, going back a little ways. So yes, this is her in that 211, but this is not her first appearance. Vertigo, and I'm going to show you here now, Vertigo the character actually appeared a few years earlier in 1981 in Marvel Fanfare. Yes, the first issue of Marvel Fanfare. Spidey, Sauron, Savage Land Tale, etc. And inside this issue, down in the Savage Land, that is when we were actually first introduced to Vertigo. Slightly different look, just not much different, but a slightly different look. But that is her 5 years earlier. So this would be her first appearance. And again, a book you can go and find. This, as you can see, $1 copy sold for $4, $5. Copies listed $5. Yes, some may ask more in the $12 to $25 range, but this is a book that you can go out there and hunt and dig for cheap. It really is. Now, with that said, those are our Marvel books for this week. Before we move on to DC, I want to remind any of you out there who need supplies, go over to BCW, get your bags, your boards, long boxes, short boxes, CGC boxes, top loaders, whatever you need to keep your comics and collectibles safe. Use my code RENA10 to save yourself 10% off your entire order over at BCW, because, you help out the channel, you get yourself a discount, you really got nothing to lose. So with that out of the way, let's get on over to DC and take a look at this week's Aquaman. So Aquaman issue 5, Return of the King. This title, I'm not really keeping up with it strongly, but loosey-goosey. There's a lot of underwater deities and characters that are being intermingled and mixed up and just kind of being told in this storyline. I mean, I saw Captain Nemo somehow in this book, but we're not going to talk about Nemo. We're going to talk about these other characters that are also helping Arthur Curry out in this book. So here we got Aquaman in the middle, and first we're going to go with the man on the left, this guy with the the big beard, and this is a character that's been around a while. This is Arion, I guess. He had his own title even for a little while, but he was actually first introduced in Warlord. Yeah, you remember Warlord? Warlord, number 55 from back in the day, 1981. And Arion. Yeah, he first showed up in this title, in this book. And darn it, there's another mistake that I made. But he's in there. Trust me. I'm not going to go pull the snapshot. I'm sorry. I'm making all sorts of mistakes, but I got a really busy weekend. I'll tell you more about it next week. But this book, I got the prices on this one. I know I got the prices because I remember grabbing the prices. This one, 89 cents. $4. $5 for a CGC. Well, no, I'm sorry. CBCS 9.6. $5 for 9.6. Copies listed $2.50. $5. $9. Point being, it's not all that expensive. That said, let's move it on and look at his other helper here, the lady in the back there. This is Vivian, also known as the Lady in the Lake, Celtic goddess of the lake, public domain character, realistically. If we're talking about Lady in the Lake, yes. This might be DC's version of Lady in the Lake, but still, the character of the Lady in the Lake has been around since the Arthur legend, so it's public domain at this point. But we can kind of zero in on the DC version a little bit here. First things first, let's go to the character. It looks most similar to what we're looking at here. We're going to January 2010, Madame Xanadu, Vertigo title. You know, Joelle Jones, Matt Wagner. And inside this, we're introduced to Vivian here. And she goes by Vivian. She's also the Lady of the Lake. Yes, it's kind of similar to the look that we have now. This book hasn't even sold recently. No sales to even report online. Copies listed, they're like $2 to $3. Again, this is dollar bin fodder if there is any. So if you're interested in that, this is one you can probably find for cheap. That said, the character of the Lady in the Lake has been around before, as I've already kind of mentioned. And if we go back a little bit further in Aquaman's history, not too far, the 2003 run, issue 1, the New Wave, we were introduced to a different version of the Lady in the Lake. She looked a little bit different in this time frame, more water-based, but this is still sort of kind of her. But, you know, with all these rebirths and new 52s and revamps and all that stuff, it's kind of hard to keep track of how we want to classify. I mean, we're way beyond pre and post-crisis when we're talking DC now. So it is what it is. I'm just pointing out this is another version of the Lady in the Lake represented in an Aquaman book, albeit a little bit of a different look. And this is another book that has no recent sales and is also listed for only $3 to $4, $5 there. So not an expensive book. Yes, it's a #1, but it is what it is. So if you're interested, it's another book for you to go and keep an eye out for. Now, with that said, now let's go over to the Green Lantern Corps for our next book. Green Lantern Corps 4 this week. Started telling a different story from the last arc where we had the old school Red Lanterns in there. And in this book, we got another big bad brought back from back in the day, and that is Evil Star. Yeah, kind of looks like a He-Man character to me. And not the most menacing of names, Evil Star, but he goes back a ways. Let's see how this ends up, playing out. That said, Evil Star. So his first goes all the way back to the 60s. That's right. So we're going Silver Age here. And I know it's going to be tough for you to find a Silver Age book in a dollar bin. That's not what I'm pointing out. I'm just pointing out the fact that this is going to be a book that you may be able to find for cheap, because it is not like some huge key or well-known book that everybody knows about and everybody goes and digs out of a box. Occasionally, you might just find some random Green Lantern issues, and some people, even though he's on the cover here, might not pay a second mind to Evil Star. Is all I'm saying. So April 1965, this is Green Lantern number 37, and yes, he's right there on the cover, but also inside the book as well, obviously. So we'll show him there with his little star minions and his cape and starfish mask, whatever. But yeah, there he is right there. Point being, this book, even going back to the 60s, copies have sold for as cheap as $7.50, and that was a buy it now price. $7.50. That's all they wanted. That's all they asked for. $7.50. And then another copy sold for almost $18. So yeah, it could go a little bit pricier. Well, that's what I'm saying. You can also find copies listed for as cheap as $5, $15, $18. Grade, condition sensitive. Obviously, the cheaper the price, the cheaper the grade, lower the grade, etc. But who knows? I'm just trying to let you know this is the first appearance of the Evil Star if you want to go out there hunting for it, and maybe you find it for a good price. That's all. With that said, one more DC book. Yeah, I got a third DC book for you. We're going to talk about Supergirl real quick. So Supergirl, brand new, #1. They're getting ready for the movie. Makes sense. I like the art in this. Book itself may not be targeted towards me, and it was okay. But I will say, a lot of stuff going on in here. And one of the characters that they referenced and brought in here was the Kryptonian werewolf here, Lauron. Yeah, Lauron. Dang, I can't make this stuff up. That's his name. But here is Lauron inside this book. And yes, he is a werewolf, and he is from Krypton. First introduced back in 1979 in World's Finest. So World's Finest, what issue is this? I can't find the 256. There it is. Issue 256, World's Finest. And yeah, that pink thing is him. And you even get their origin story of how he was just a guy, and then he ended up hurting the woman he loved, yada, yada, yada. Kryptonian werewolf right here, Lauron. Cool. I know what you're thinking. Again, another older book, probably expensive. Really isn't. Really isn't. Copies sold for as cheap as 99 cents with 2 bids. $1.50, $7.20. Asking prices, $6, $7, $18. Yes, there might be some higher asks, but the point being, as you can see by some of the sales, it can even be bought online sometimes for very, very, very cheap. So go dig at a shop, yard sale, flea market, wherever you're doing your digging, your hunting, have at it. Who knows? Now, before we move on, I still got a couple of more things to talk about. I'm not done yet. So before we move on, I also want to remind you, if you haven't tried Whatnot, use my link and code down below to get yourself a free $15 on your first purchase. That's right, $15 to spend on whatever you want with whomever you want. I know all of these pack rips and Battle Beast packs, etc., have been all the rage lately. So use $15 and get something for free if you want to dive in and get in on the fun. So what do you got to lose there? You help out the channel, you get yourself a free $15 if you haven't tried Whatnot before. So there you go. Use the link down below to get yourself that free $15. Now, moving on, I'm going to show you the spoiler cover because it's been a couple of days, but we're going to talk about Transformers issue 20 for this week. And the spoiler cover showed the aerial bots being introduced into the Energon universe. Yes, the aerial bots. One of my favorite groups from back in the day, because I remember it was one of my first combiners. Well, it was actually the second one after the Constructicons making Devastator. I think the next one I got was the aerial bots, I think for Christmas one year. That all said, inside this issue, yes, they're on that spoiler cover, but they're also in the issue as well, and we get introduced to the aerial bots. All individuals at this point. But as you know, they do form up and combine to make Superion. Didn't happen yet, but that's who we're going to focus in on. It's easier to talk about them as a group because they make Superion. Again, pretty awesome set. A lot of fun. I remember it's a lot of nostalgia for me as a kid going back to this toy. That said, comic-wise, they showed up in June of 1986 in issue 21 of that original Transformers run. You can see they're right there on the cover. You got the 5 jets all flying in, taking on the 3 Decepticons. With that, inside the book, we get introduced to all of them as well. Silverbolt, Air Raid, Skydive, etc. They're all in there. This is a book, again, you can go out there, dig, find it for cheap. Doesn't go for all that much. $7. That's what we got here. $6, $6, $7. Yeah, those are recent sales. Asking prices, $5, $6, $5. There might be a more expensive one here or there, but by and large, that's the kind of price we're talking about here. So once again, not a huge deal, not a huge book, but still kind of a fun thing if you're interested in getting more of those Transformer firsts. Now, also more on the independent angle, independent side of things. I don't do much reading of Spawn, but hey, let's take a look at Spawn this week because we got a lot of characters. There's a lot going on in this book. Again, I'm not keeping up to date, but I was flipping through this thing. There's a lot going on. So with issue 364 of Spawn, I'm just going to give you this one panel, and you'll see, like, it seems like all the Spawn history is here. I mean, we've got characters from all over. You got She-Spawn, I think Freak's back there, Gunslinger Spawn, Medieval Spawn. We got Mandarin Spawn. We got Cygor and another Spawn from the Curse of Spawn, and Redeemer back there. And I think Overkill, or whatever the heck they renamed him as now, and Monolith. Tons and tons of characters. And then even that other character, Haunt, is right up there at the top as well. Tons of characters all jumping in here. But as you see where my arrow is pointing, we're going to first focus in on the Redeemer. Now, this isn't the original Redeemer. I think there have been like 3 or 4 of them since he was first introduced, but the current Redeemer is unnamed at this point. Apparently, Spawn knows who he is, but the reader, we don't know who's the real deal person here under the mask. But I guess we'll find out eventually. I don't know. At least that's what I was reading. That said, Redeemer first showed up just a few years ago, November 2020, in issue 312 of Spawn. Multiple covers on this. I'm just showing you this one. The cover A, the world record breaking comic. Yeah, there you go. Inside this book, Gunslinger Spawn is facing off with this new Redeemer right over here. Cool. I mean, it's cool look. I mean, art's solid. Can't go wrong there. And it's not really going for much more than cover. It's basically a cover price book. So you can find this thing out there probably for cover or less if you go out there hunting. Look, $3.99, $4.40 were some recent sales. Asking prices as cheap as $2, $2.39, $6.15. Yeah, it's not all that expensive. And again, you can see there is one of the other covers that is available on this issue 312 as well, if you want to go hunting for that. Now, that's the current Redeemer. But the actual first Redeemer was one of the original villains of the series, Jason Wynn, and he was actually originally called Anti-Spawn. Yeah, that's right, Anti-Spawn. This was also Greg Capullo's first work on the Spawn title, picking up after McFarlane on issue 16 of the title from December of 1993. So in this issue, in the back, we get introduced to, there he is, the first Redeemer, Anti-Spawn. And then they rebranded him because Anti-Spawn was kind of a silly name. That said, this is not an expensive book. You would probably think this was an expensive book, but realistically, Spawn was very, very heavily printed. There are a lot of copies out there, and copies can be had for $3, yeah, $7, listed $3, $2.50, $4. Not expensive at all. But if you want to go and find a cheap book, get yourself a fun old school first and the first Capullo on the title. There you go. Something to go and hunt for. Okay, going back to that big splash page, big double page spread, let's look at the other big guy, the big gorilla guy over here, Cygor, next. So, Cygor is another one of those older Spawn villains, Spawn characters, I guess you could say. I guess we can't really call them all villains because they're kind of... Anyway, I remember the original toys for these more than I do the comics at this stage of the game, because the toys were really, really cool. The comics, I just didn't keep up on reading the title. Spawn was just never one of the best reads for me, personally, despite the fact that it's been running forever. It just wasn't my thing, that's all. That said, Cygor goes back to 1995 in issue 38, and there he is on the cover, even though it's kind of, obscured and blurred and may look a little bit more like Tremor, character who showed up earlier in, like, I think issue 6 or whatever. No, maybe not 6. Anyway, you know the one I'm talking about. The other big monster with the horns kind of looks like him. But no, this is Cygor, and inside the book, he is there as well. Boom, there you go. Again, not a pricey book. Print run's still pretty high at this point. $6.50, $5.50, $13.50. But newsstands will command a premium on this book, just so you know. So you look for asking prices. Yeah, they're $4 copies and they're $10 copies. And then you get into those newsstands, they're looking for $17, $15, closer to $20, because you get those newsstand versions. So keep that in mind when you're out there flipping and hunting, especially with those older Spawn books. So always look for the Spawn newsie, because you'll get a premium on those every time. Sticking with this book and sticking with this splash page, we're going one more here. Big red guy there in the back, Monolith. That's who we're going to be talking about next. And he is another character that's not all that old. He goes back just a little bit of a ways to 2020, December 2020, issue 313. So the issue after the one we talked about with the new Redeemer, we get Monolith introduced there. And there is a variant cover with him on the cover, which is why I chose this one. But also inside the guts of this book, despite whatever cover you find, there he is. Lo and behold, he's inside. Now, this book is, again, it's like a cover price book. It's not that expensive. $4, $5, $7. There is one of the other covers kind of shown there for $3.13. And then we got another set of listings. This is what's available. $4, $4.50, $16 somebody's shooting for. But hey, it is what it is. It's a book you can probably find cover or less out there. Despite the fact the cover was actually $2.99, so keep that in mind as well. Even $4 is a bit of a premium, albeit not that much. Now, the last character I want to talk about that showed up in this book is not in that huge splash page that we just showed. I mean, yes, there's a lot of characters there, and we could go into all of them if we wanted to. I didn't want to go that route today. We'll save some of those for another time. But another character that showed up in this book is this guy here, a super speedster, apparently, named Focus. Okay, well, Spawn's got a speedster too. Focus. Here we go. So the character of Focus actually showed up first in Gunslinger Spawn. Gunslinger Spawn number 15 to be exact, from December of 2022. Yeah, Puppeteer Lee cover. Pretty cool cover. There's a black and white version of this one as well. Open order, but inside this, there we go. There's Focus, front and center. Cool. Another book you could find. $5, $3. Somebody bought one $13 from the black and whites of the Puppeteer Lee. Again, that's not an incentive. It's just the B cover or the black and white version of the cover. But still, impressive sale. Asking prices, it's like $3 to $4. That's it. It's not a huge expensive book or anything like that, but just another fun one I could throw out there for you guys to go and hunt if you want to go look for some more firsts. Just go tuck it away in a box. Now, before we move on, let's just get into the rumors. And yesterday on the Hot 10, there was a book that appeared on there, albeit on the lower end of the side of things, tied to the rumor that Marvel may be making an Annihilators movie. Is an Annihilators movie in the works? And yes, there's all this speculation over which version of the team. Will Cosmo be in there? Are they going to use people from the films? Are they going to introduce a lot of these characters? Are we going to finally get Beta Ray Bill? Maybe is Nova going to be part of the squad? We had Ronin, and maybe they're going to use the new Silver. All speculation. Even the fact that even they go this route is speculation. But let's talk about them anyway. So the group called the Annihilators. Now, the book that showed up on the Hot 10 list, because it started to sell based off of this news and a certain app pointing to this as being the first appearance of the team, is Thanos Imperative Devastation, the one-shot, January 2011. And yes, this leads into the Annihilators solo series, because then they, at the end of this issue, it's like, go pick up Annihilators issue 1, yada, yada. And yes, this book leads right into it. That's where they come up with their team name, too, Annihilators. It's a little provocative, don't you think? Yeah, it's Quasar. Yes. No argument here. But I will bring something else up in a second. So let's look at this book, which is now selling for way more than I would have expected. But go dig. Maybe not all the shops have pulled their copies yet from their cheap boxes, but copies have just sold just today. $25, $40 for this thing. Where before, this was like a $4 or $5 book. This was, again, a very cheap comic. Copies listed are also more on the higher end, 35. That 1850 is the second print of this comic, along with a couple other issues. So just for context. Point being, this is the book that is currently kind of a flavor of the week thing. Again, it ended up on the Hot 10 list yesterday, if you saw it. But is it the right book? I don't know. It's up for you to decide. I'm not going to tell you which book to buy. I'm just pointing things out. Yes, team name, team there, lead into their solo series, which started up after that one shot. But in a Justice League Dark kind of way, earlier in the run, earlier in the actual Thanos Imperative miniseries, October 2010, a few months earlier, in issue 3, this squad kind of comes together and starts working together. Do they call themselves the Annihilators yet? No. Is this the exact group we see at the end? Kind of, sort of, almost, basically. I don't know. Point being, look, inside this issue, there's the whole squad. They're working together. Call it what you want. I call it, that looks like a team to me. But with that said, I couldn't find any copies sold recently of this. Thanos Imperative on its own. I mean, they'll sell in lots and for the entire run, etc. But this one is still much cheaper by examples. You see $3. Yes, there's some $10 copies here and there. Some even listed as first prototype Annihilators team, for whatever that means. But it is what it is. I'm just pointing out the fact that it looks like the same team to me. Not only that, Marvel knew what they were doing, because they also released a second print of this issue. And what do you think they chose as the cover? It's a wraparound of that team shot. So Marvel knew what they were doing. Marvel was making it a point that this was an important issue for them. And this second print is another one you can go and look for. Keep an eye out for while you're digging out there. A copy recently sold for, was it 10 bucks? 11 bucks, actually. And there's a couple listed looking for 8 to 10 bucks. But I'm just saying, go dig in a box, and who knows what you might find out of there. Again, I'm not telling you what's right. I'm not telling you what to buy. I'm just pointing out the fact that this is what's in these books. You make your own decisions and buy the book that you want to buy, and for the price that you want to pay. That said, that's all I got for you. So thanks for stopping by and checking this out. Sorry it was running a little late. Sorry I had so many mistakes while making this. But like I said, got a lot going on right now, and I still wanted to get this done and get this out there. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully enjoy everything else here on the channel. Got more stuff coming your way next week and in all the weeks up ahead. So hopefully you're on board for the ride, and I'll see you all later with some more content. All right.